1 minute to go. Ladies and gentlemen, it's 2 o'clock and you're very welcome to the Health and Wellbeing Board of the 15th of November 2023. We're now live on YouTube and we've got a really packed agenda today. In the first part, we're going to go through 2 papers. One, the annual report from the Director of Public Health, Jonathan Gribben, a very short chair's report, and then somewhere around 2:30 we're going to make our way through to the Assembly Rooms, and we're going to have a workshop on violence against women and girls. So we're under the stop clock, so we shall be pressing ahead. All life changes, and it's quite interesting that we got a new Secretary of State for Health yesterday. Just when we were all getting used to Steve Barclay, along comes another one called Victoria Atkins. Now, just by pure design, Victoria spent 4 years from 2017 to 2021 in the Ministry of Justice tackling violence against women and girls. So I think that there's some sort of poetic link between the two. Councillor Wilmot, you probably agree with me with that. So we got somebody who's very interested in our topics for today. I'm going to start off with apologies. Reece, do you have any apologies today?
Yeah, so we've got apologies for Henry Wheeler, Stephen Short, Sarah Collis, Teresa Hodgkinson, John Bennett, and we've got Richard Blackberry, substituting for Colin Tideswell, and Janine Elson, substituting for Dave Briggs.
Excellent. Declarations of interest. If anybody here present has any declarations of interest, pecuniary or non-pecuniary, could let us know. If not, hang on. Richard.
Yeah, non-pecuniary, because of the topic of co-production. I'm a member of My Life Choices co-production group. I'm also a member of the ICS Strategic Co-production Group, National Voices Lived Experience Partner, and some relevance with Community Services Transformation Programme Co-Design Council. So those are areas I'm involved in.
Noted, Richard. If anybody remembers anything throughout today relevant, feel free to let us know about it. So we're going to move on from declaration of interest to the minutes of the last meeting, which is page 3. I'm moving through the minutes which are for noting or for correction rather than for comment. Page 4, moving through to page 5 and page 6 and page 7 and page 8. I'm going to recommend that the minutes are an accurate report. Dylan, would you like to second that?
Yes, Chair.
Second that. All those in favour? Excellent. So the minutes of the meeting have passed. We're going to move on now in a slightly juxtapositioned change to what we would normally do. We would normally come in with the chair's report, but the chair's report has been bumped down the agenda by something more important, the annual report of the Director of Public Health, Jonathan Gribben, who is this time around going to talk to us about something called SMDs. I thought originally it was severe multiple disabilities, and I was thinking about rheumatoid arthritis and blood pressure, and I was thinking about all sorts of diseases that I see in my patients every day. But it's actually severe multiply disadvantaged people who have severe challenges in life through a variety of issues which we're about to hear. Jonathan, could I pass over to you?
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, board members. Yes, we're going to be talking about severe multiple disadvantage. We're approaching it through the lens of the Director of Public Health annual report, which in your papers you'll see is something that I have a statutory duty to produce, and that Nottinghamshire County Council has a duty to publish. And the reason that we're focusing on severe multiple disadvantage this year is really because of we're wanting to highlight some of the obstacles and challenges that people living with severe multiple disadvantage encounter and routinely experience, but also shine a spotlight on their achievements and their courage and the hope that it holds out to others who are making a similar journey themselves. The reason for focusing on this particular group of people within our population is that you'll be aware from having read the paper and seen some of the videos that they experience some of the very worst health outcomes of any group of people anywhere across Nottinghamshire. And ambition 4 of our joint health and wellbeing strategy particularly focuses on people who find themselves excluded by the arrangements that society makes. And we're particularly wanting to, that represents an area that we need to give further focus to. And so that's why I've chosen it as the topic to focus on for this year's annual report. There is a second aim that I've had alongside those in choosing this topic, and it relates to the way that we've gone about it. So a supplementary aim for me has been to get some further experience in co-production. If I look across the public health division, I can see a number of great examples of where we're co-producing services with people with lived experience. And some of our delivery partners have a lot of experience and expertise in that. But it's a journey that we're on as a division, and it's something that we've yet to make a routine and consistent part of our commissioning arrangements. So in this year's report, it's been really important to me, not that this is a desk exercise undertaken by people in public health, but that it's something that we've been able to undertake with people with lived experience of severe multiple disadvantage. And at this point, I'd really like to emphasize my gratitude and to acknowledge the investment of time and insights and experience that people with lived experience have made in helping us to produce this report. And what we've done is certainly has been entirely reliant on their input, and I'm grateful for that. You'll see that the report this year isn't something primarily in writing. You do have a written report in your papers, but actually the primary output, if you like, to get hold of this year is a series of videos. And you were sent links to those, and I hope that you were able to access them. Over the coming weeks and months, we will be publishing some much shorter versions of those as well. And with your agreement, Chair, what I'd like to do now is to ask my colleague Lizzie Winter to show us just one of those videos. It focuses on someone we'll know here as Julian and his true story. And it's representative of what we find in the other video accounts too. Chair, with your agreement, I'll do that and then perhaps add 1 or 2 comments around the recommendations.
Absolutely.
Refers to those whose current circumstances have been strongly shaped by deprivation, trauma and abuse, often leading to experiences of homelessness, mental ill health, domestic violence, harmful use of drugs and alcohol, and perhaps contact with the criminal justice system. These residents experience some of the worst health outcomes of any group in Nottinghamshire.
My name's Julian. I'm originally from West Bridgeford. I grew up in West Bridgeford. Everything I'm talking about today is from my own experience. In my late 30s, had a business, was married happily, parenting my stepson. Business was successful for a good period of time. Quite a privileged sense of self, I guess, and fortunate. Life was going really well. I had issues with drugs and alcohol, but I was addressing those issues. I'd been into a detox, I'd had time in a rehab. I'd relapsed badly, which all came out. It cost me my business, cost me my family. was in and out of recovery, some clean time, then some back into the madness of addiction. So on the back end of that, on the back end of divorce, losing the business, I really did fall into addiction. I was not managing my life at all. Things were really bad. In the chaos that I was in the madness of addiction, I lost everything, or threw it away in a way. It took me to some really dark places, took me to homelessness. I didn't have anything really. I would go out just nubbing ashtrays. If I needed to eat, I'd eat out of a bin. I was clothing myself out of things I was finding in skips. My background's creative, so I'm a creative, I'm an artist, and I've had situations where I believed I was being creative. Later realising through diagnosis that I was being manic and it was mania. I was actually psychotic. So times when I was getting picked up by the police, I was not getting arrested, but I was getting sectioned. You know, I didn't understand what was happening to me. It was quite difficult to get any sense of recovery or anything at the time, if I'm honest. Fortunately, I ended up with a worker who was helping me get to appointments. He was great because I was that disorganised and unmanageable. He was that one glimmer of hope in a sense, because my worker there would take me out for a cup of coffee, and it just felt a bit like, you know, it was normal, and I was getting myself back into some sense of society. I was very fortunate in having a team of people around me that helped me get to where I am today, to be clean and sober. I haven't done it on my own. From being in a mental health project for 2 years, I had support every day, even if that was a phone call or someone knocking on your door to see if you're all right. I've just recently got my own council flat, 1 bedroom, ground floor council flat with a garden, which is unbelievable. Really, really, really do count my blessings. I personally don't believe that there's much chance of recovery if you haven't got a home. My experience of hostels was being rehoused into a really inappropriate place. It's not person-centred, it's not holistic, which I'd hope as things get more and more co-produced, you know, you're able to have that as a pathway as well, where you're being seen. Severe multiple disadvantage, SMD, to be able to identify as that, it's a real opportunity to recognise it as a health issue. From being in a place of desperation and despairing and lost, I was broken. I was completely broken. I had nothing left to give. Coming from that place, hopefully through my experience, I'm able to help other people. I guess today I do feel like I'm contributing again, and I feel part of society again in a good way. I've got a sense of pride, and I feel blessed in a way. I don't feel as though this has come that easily. I know I don't want to throw it away, and I feel part of something bigger than myself.
Well, my thanks again to Julian and to others who've either contributed on videos or who've contributed to some of the discussion groups and forums which also sit behind this, and where perhaps those individuals aren't visible to us. You'll see in the reports in your papers that the recommendations arising from this are set out in paragraph 10 and cover a number of areas, addressing, for example, the need for housing, and for that to be at the centre and primary in supporting people with severe multiple disadvantage. There are a number of other recommendations too. And Chair, the ones that I was hoping to focus on in particular, ones that I was wanting to, that I think the Health and Wellbeing Board, that we collectively have an opportunity to get behind. And you'll see those listed at the bottom of the paper. So we're interested, amongst other things, based on the input that we've had from people with lived experience, to be able to develop a framework which health and care organisations can use to deliver services which are properly trauma informed. That's one thing that the Health and Wellbeing Board could get behind in terms of sponsoring the development of that framework. Similarly, we think, based on what we've heard, notwithstanding the great work that does go on around co-production across the system and the strong commitment that many partners have made, we do think that there's further opportunity to strengthen some of that. And we recognise that actually embedding this across our system and making sure that in particular it addresses the needs of people with lived experience of severe multiple disadvantage, that the scope for further work there from the Health and Wellbeing Board, and also I think work that we can sponsor as a board to co-produce guidance for partner organisations about the use of language which is strength-based. That's something which a number of people who contributed to this really emphasised to us, and we feel is very important to reflect in the recommendations. Chair, back to you. Thank you very much.
Ed, thanks very much, Director. I think it's something, certainly in the last 3 or 4 weeks, I was dealing with a particular case, and it was a person who was drinking too much, would come into me. I would try and help detoxify them. They would leave, they would drink, they would get into trouble, and in 4 weeks' time, they'd been up to the police, they'd been in A&E, they'd been admitted to hospital, they'd called the crisis team. They've been chucked out by their partner, they've been on the street, they've been coming in for medications, people have been ringing me to say they'll overdose on the medications, then they'll be back with their partner again, then they're drinking again. And these are real life daily occurrences. And the one thing that came out of it was how chaotic the system is and how disjointed it is, and how is there anybody who's got the final sort of overview of exactly what happens to these people. As it is, he's done quite well, but he could equally well have ended up in prison. He could still be in hospital. He could have got into a fight and got himself injured. Any one of those things, it was a roll of the dice, really, as to how he ended up. And I think that's the enormity of the challenge that exists out there today. We have a number of recommendations. Housing first, obviously, is the first port of call, because nobody gets better on the street. You might treat them on the street, you might intervene on the street, but it can only get better when they're actually in housing, and that's when you can tackle the mental health, and that's when you can tackle the physical problems, that's when you can tackle the addictions, etc. And absolutely important, as you said, that it's the framework in which you see people existing in these situations. They're not there by choice, they're there by the things that life has sort of vested upon them. And it requires a coordinated approach, particularly around the language that we use in helping people out in that sense. I'm going to open it up to questions. Cillen, I'll let you comment first.
Thank you very much, and a bit forward. This is not so much of a recommendation, but it's an adjunct to the recommendation in terms of embedding this across the systems. Jonathan, I completely agree. I think what you just said, Chair, I think the chaotic or the sort of silo working of the system is a reflection of how the services are currently done, and in turn how as GPs or as professionals or carers, because we see at a point of time we try to address an issue which is alcohol, or we try to address an issue which is a mental health, or not taking the person as a whole. Now, obviously that's sort of background which we've been working in, but what I can also say on the other side is that things, for example, Rosewood PC and Mid Nottinghamshire, they've had a dedicated piece of work in terms of our understanding identifying those individuals, and it's also having those services. It's that joined up care which we need to do. So the recommendation actually in terms of embedding across the system is about raising awareness, particularly among the frontline staff. So when you see someone with an alcohol issue, think, is this SMD? Like you said, a year ago, I thought it was severe multiple disabilities. So it's rather than even the term itself is not something which we would be very familiar with. And it's that sort of awareness which we need to raise, because it's only through increasing awareness that we will identify those individuals in our 10 or 15-minute consultation that this individual has something that's much more than alcohol dependency or substance misuse or mental health, and then signposting or helping that individual, so that raising awareness is as equally as important as embedding in the system. So thank you very much, John.
Thank you, Callum. Councillor Wilmot.
Thank you very much, Chairman. Also, thank you for your report, Jonathan. It really is mind-boggling, and must make us all think very, very much of what it needs to be done in the next few years. What this report actually lays bare is the inequalities that exist across Nottinghamshire. These are exasperated by the inequalities of services provided. For example, in Ashfield, we have just invested 22.7 million in leisure facilities, including a new training pool at Hucknall Leisure Centre, built a brand new leisure centre in Kirkby, and invested in the Lammas Leisure Centre. Providing access, this is providing access to healthy living, which is a key priority in Ashfield. Something that, for various reasons, I'm not sure that other councils are on board with. I hope they are, but if they're not, then this is a real concern. I agree with that more needs to be done to help these people who find themselves in these precarious positions. But it cannot be done by one organisation. That's absolutely essential, and needs a fresh focus by working with and in partnership with all other organisations that do work in this area. Making sure that we're working to strengthen support for these people facing these challenges. By bringing the different organisations together, you will find all the different ways of tackling many serious problems. There needs to be a regular meeting with each of these action organisations to scrutinise progress, and we must ask them to do things, not just to come to meetings to listen. To set priorities that people, all the organisations should be coming back and telling them how well they've done on that situation. You know, working together and doing as much as we possibly can. Can I say, by bringing these organisations together, we will find all different ways of tackling this serious problem. We will, I'm sure. We need to be regular meetings to scrutinise all the problems. But what I'm more concerned about is to work out some early intervention schemes to stop these problems from ever occurring. Why are these people becoming homeless? What has caused these people to have mental illness issues? Would you agree that the mixed messaging coming at the time from the government, it don't seem to be that helpful? I mean, look at the former Home Secretary, Suella Braverman, described homelessness as a lifestyle choice. That's an appalling situation to say. I'm sorry, but it is. We shouldn't be saying those sort of things. Can I also say, comments like that invite stigma. And also, I'm ashamed of those comments, I really am. But they were, of course, backed by some of the Nottinghamshire MPs, which they need to be looked at. And what we need to look at people's lives at a very early age and educate these problems out of the system before they start. This means a new way forward, a totally new way forward, and means involving our children's services where all the problems start. As an authority, we need to play a leading role in educating children out of poverty. If that is done, it will save resources in later life, tackling deprivation, trauma and abuse. I'll come over to the recommendations. I totally agree with all the recommendations that have been put forward, but look at the housing one. Most of the local authorities have got huge waiting lists. How are we going to cope with that? There's only one way. There is only one way of doing that, and that is by building council houses, because they can't afford the housing that's available at the moment, the private housing. I mean, we in Ashfield charge 80 something pounds for a 3-bedroom house. Do you know how much it is on the private sector? 130 or to 200 pounds. An astonishing amount of money, which shouldn't be allowed to happen, but life is life. We can't do anything about it. But I'm just saying, so what needs to be done, more council houses need to be built. And so it means the government have got to change their attitude and put money into building homes for all these people. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Wilmot. The director had a video that you may have seen in the pack where he talks about collaborative housing solutions, and particularly puts forward your point of housing first. So there's no doubt about that at all. I mean, we think it's quite a rare thing to find yourself on the street, but catastrophizing is something that I hear every day. People lose their job, then they think they're going to not be able to pay the mortgage, then they think they're going to lose the house, then they think that the wife is going to leave them, they'll never see the kids again, they'll be on the street. People catastrophize about this happening all the time. Is one of the great fears of people, and unfortunately it's one of the great realities for a number of people too. Councillor Richard Falvey.
Thank you, Chair. Yeah, and just to add on to that, you know, it's very easy to fall and to find yourself in that kind of situation. I've got quite a few observations and a few challenges to make, but I'd like to say that I really like the piece of work you've done here and your involvement of lived experience. I think it's a big step forward compared to a lot of stuff that's going on. I really applaud your work there. So anything critical I say is is constructively critical. Please take it in that light. I agree with Councillor Wilmot there, didn't really see the prevention piece in this, which is maybe just beyond scope, but it's a sort of a question. And a very general point is SMD seems to pertain to men most, and in all your stories it's predominantly women. Maybe they're more forthcoming and more upfront about being on camera and stuff, but it's an interesting reflection that if we're doing the lived experiencing and we're talking to people who are afflicted most, then that's one but very small. So I'm a great advocate of co-production and co-design and the right thing in its place. And I wonder if you've, in your report, confused, I'm thinking of paragraph 5, if you talked about co-production when you mean co-design. I think the report was co-designed. You have the statutory obligation to deliver it. I doubt if anyone on the street ever occurred to them that they want to write a report of this nature. So I think the report was co-designed, but you're right, it's opened you up to and got you involved in the possibilities of co-production, and you've seen that gap, which is very good to recognise. You've recognised the gap and the capacity that the council needs to develop. So I really applaud that. Okay. And then moving on to B, recommendation B, trauma informed. Again, I think that's fantastic and exactly the right direction to go. You're at the cutting edge there. I just wonder if when you're dealing with psychiatric and mental health services in Nottingham, you might struggle to get buy-in. So I think you possibly need to think a little bit about that. It's a sort of, I have a reliable source on this, but I can't disclose who they are. But I think, Nottingham is possibly a bit behind on that, in that aspect, a bit resistant to becoming trauma informed rather than just biomedical. Point C, I think.
Sorry, Richard, could you just clarify that point for me again? I think it was over my head.
Yeah, sorry. So my understanding, and as a user of mental health services quite intensively, at least in the past, is that Nottingham is a little bit behind perhaps in recognising and investing in trauma-informed approaches, which is a newer version of mental health. I mean, in health and care, things take 20 years to filter down to the front line. That's just a fact. And so maybe it's just a lag thing that we're looking at. But there are allies, but you may find that some challenges there. I'm just highlighting that. Maybe not the forum to do it, I don't know. So point C, this I think is actually the sort of almost like the golden egg. If you could crack the appropriately sharing thing with SMD, because that particularly inverted commas hard to reach, then it'll just roll out for everyone else in terms of the sharing of information, single point of contact. Julian talked about a worker. It was obviously his point of contact, and there's another video where the person talks about a single point of contact. We hear it in the dementia stuff. The single point of contact is so crucial. and then for that person's information to be shared appropriately, as you say, system 1, system 2, all the different systems in the community voluntary services sectors. I don't know what the actual specific ones are for local government and care. How do you crack that GDPR nightmare? If you can do it, then you will be a hero, and I really encourage you to do it, and encourage you to invest over time in doing it, because it's such a useful piece of work to do, but it will require resources. Just while we're on that, you know, there's the personalised care team in conjunction with My Life Choices have produced some very good, and just reproduced some very good work on All About Me, which is a sort of a sharing thing. And the Alzheimer's Society obviously have done work on that as well. So there are things, and Newark has something which is not for SMD particularly, but for sharing information, a sort of a thing to be kept in the home, so all visitors are recorded and stuff. So borrow, steal, use the resources that are there. But again, I think, you know, if you can crack this, then that's fantastic. Final thing there is electronic sharing, getting a single piece of paper that covers people's stories. That's great. But then the staff that are going to deal with those people, the workers, need time to read it before they engage. I've got 2 more points to make if we're running out of time. So D, again, fantastic. I just changed the wording a little bit to say co-production with lived experience and partner organisations, rather than co-production for anyone. Just to make that really clear that it's all 3 parties or groups working together from the outset. And then E, which is sort of 2 parts. Again, you've got your own Our Voices group, Sarah Cragg here in County, who are fantastic. I've mentioned My Life Choices, which is ICS, and the personalised care team. You'll find allies in the Community Services Transformation Programme, especially working on health inequalities. And there's also the ICS Strategic Co-Production Group. So people are there, and if you can be the driving force to join them, you and your team, obviously it's not a single individual, to join them all together, that would be fantastic. However, and this is my biggest sort of like question mark challenge, is if you're growing this network of co-production groups, they need to be facilitated, because people with lived experience will often give too much and get too little. So you need facilitation to look after their well-being as they're participating, and also you need facilitation to protect them from the system asking too much. Lived experience people shouldn't be doing the heavy lifting, they should be doing the advising. And then the final thing there is you'll need to pay your co-production army. The ICS has been lagging on this, ICS, ICB, whatever it is, lagging on this for at least 2 years. Nothing's signed off. It's been rolling and rolling. Again, if you can apply pressure, it would be greatly appreciated. We need to have something where lived experience people are recompensed and rewarded for the time, energy and work. They are doing work, although we can't recognize them as doing work, but that needs to happen. So I think you've done a fantastic job. I think there are financial implications, and the document didn't really say there's any financial implications. I think there are financial implications because this is a piece of work that needs time, effort, perseverance, and you've made a great start. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Falvey. Director, did you want to come back on anything? Or
if I may just make a couple of points to in the first place to thank and acknowledge the comments that have been made, and I think Till and Councillor Wilmot picked up important themes around integration, which of course is one of the things as an integrated care system is a real priority to us. So integration, whether we're thinking about how as frontline professionals we might work with an individual, or indeed how we might better arrange services in terms of their integration. And you, Chair, you've already commented on the importance of housing in this as well. And Councillor Valvey, thank you for all those comments. And I've made a note of each of them, and it will be very helpful. Those will be helpful to us in the journey that we're making within the Public Health Division in terms of developing our capacity and capability in co-producing or co-designing, and indeed across the council as well, because as a system, although there are parts of the system that are more or less advanced, this is a journey that I think most of us are still on. In regard to some of the challenges that our partner organisations face, and you alluded to one or two of those, I think they probably recognise too that they're on a journey. For ourselves, we've benefited and we continue to benefit from the challenge and the support that we get from partner agencies, as well as people with lived experience around the local system. And I'm sure that colleagues in the Mental Health Care Trust will similarly benefit from challenge and support from the rest of us too. And I note your points about language, and it is important, and thank you for helping us with that too.
Thank you. I knew this agenda could take the whole of the afternoon by itself, never mind just one area of it. And I think in the recommendations, recommendation 4 is to schedule a health and wellbeing workshop for Nottinghamshire County Council and partners to offer a response to those recommendations, which will be a whole afternoon and will be entirely dedicated to a follow-up on this particular item, as opposed to this being an end of any one document. I don't think there's any doubt that housing, important, understanding how people with severe multiple disadvantages engage with the system, as opposed to how the system engages with them. Sharing your story only once. Nobody wants to tell the same story to every single person they get, and language is so important. I'm going to move to the recommendations. The Health and Wellbeing Board is asked to receive and comment on the 2023 TPH annual report, to agree to contribute towards implementing the recommendations within the report. This means the Health and Wellbeing Board will sponsor the development of a framework which the health and care organisations and other public health services in Nottingham can use to implement trauma-informed care. Health and Wellbeing Board will sponsor to co-produce guidance for partner organisations using strength-based and recovery-orientated language, to agree to support the implementation of the recommendations with partners other than those represented at Health and Wellbeing, and as mentioned before, to schedule a workshop for Nottinghamshire County Council to offer a response to the recommendations, which we will see appear on the work programme. I'm going to recommend those and ask for a seconder. Dr. Bartholomew, seconded. All those in favour? Excellent. Thank you very much. We are, strangely enough, very slightly behind schedule, and the Chair's report normally has over 100 items on it. That was in the days of Bryony, and we're in the days of Lizzie now, who has managed to just put one item on it. So there'll be a happy medium in there somewhere. The Chair's report is going to look at one of the most important things that's come out of the King's speech, one of the most important things that's come out of proposed new legislation, and that is that from the 1st of January 2027, to put a ban on selling cigarettes to anybody born after the 1st of January 2009. In other words, anybody who is at that stage under 18, and that will rise by a year every year, such that those people who are under 18 will never be able to buy a cigarette. We're the second country in the world to do it. We're behind New Zealand, who were the first to implement it, and it's probably going, they reckon they could get smoking free by 2025, which is very ambitious. But he went a bit further, that they had 6,000 outlets and they reduced them to 600, meaning that your availability to actually purchase a cigarette was severely reduced, as indeed was taxation significantly increased. Not only has it suggested that we put this ban in place from 2027, but significant funding was allocated to a media campaign to continue to help people to stop smoking and help us achieve a smoke-free Nottinghamshire and England. trading standards were getting up to £30 million to help implement action against counterfeit cigarettes, etc. And the budget for stop smoking within councils, within public health departments, was set to double. A very bold piece of legislation involving significant investment and following on from the New Zealand initiative. The recommendation is, because this is out to public consultation between October and December, and the 6th of December is the final date for comment, we're basically asking that you give me permission to comment on behalf of the Public Health and Wellbeing Board on that, because we haven't got time to do it elsewhere, and to add it as a future item to the Health and Wellbeing Board. I always say to people that I don't care if you live to be 100, I don't care if you invent some new form of antibiotic or penicillin, a new investigative machine like an MRI scanner or anything like that. You will never do a single thing more important in your life than actually getting to a smoke-free Nottinghamshire, because it is the biggest killer, it is the biggest cause of inequality. If you look at Rushcliffe, Mansfield, and say there's a 7-year difference in life expectancy between the two, 50% of the entirety of that life expectancy, 3.5 years, could be wiped out by not having smoking in the generation to come. It is that significant, it is that important, it is that worth repeating on every single opportunity that we get. And I welcome the legislation, and as I said, I put forward the recommendation that I'm allowed to respond on behalf of the Health and Wellbeing Board, and we'll add it in to the Health and Wellbeing workshop. Those are the recommendations. All those in let's get a second. All those in favour? Fantastic. Let that be carried. And what you've got now is minus 10 minutes to go through to the assembly rooms and prepare for a workshop on violence against women and girls. Thank you very much.